Hi there. So I'm very sorry not to be with you today at the meeting on indicators or the right to education. I really have wanted to join you, but I'm not there, owing to other commitments. I wanted to say a little bit about the work that we've done on building national education charters, citizens' education charters, and work around rights respecting schools. This is something which had its origins in the work of the Right to Education project and the mapping of indicators against education rights, which was done over the last year principally, and which generated a sort of framework of education indicators against the 4 A's as defined by Katerina Tomaszewski. But also which looked at issues of participation, of non-discrimination and accountability. And what we did was to say, well, we really want to translate this into practice at a local level in different countries. And so we took these core indicators and did a sort of a new mapping of education rights, trying to find as simple a format as we could to communicate the right to education as being much more than just the right to access to education at a local level to schools in low-income countries. And so we did a sort of systematic mapping of the sort of international commitments, everything from the CRC, the Conventional Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, CEDAW and other legal frameworks, to draw out very clearly referenced 10 core rights that every school should respect. And those 10 core rights are, first of all and perhaps most fundamentally, the right to free and compulsory education, secondly the right to non-discrimination, thirdly the right to adequate infrastructure, fourthly right to quality trained teachers, fifth is the right to safe and non-violent environment, sixth is the right to relevant education, 7 is the right to know your rights, 8th the right to participate, 9th the right to transparent and accountable schools, and finally the right to quality learning. Each of these are elaborated in much more detail in the framework which I believe you will have in front of you in the meeting, and what for each of these rights we've defined exactly where these rights are originated from, in which sections of each of the international treaties and conventions, and we find of course also in many cases that these key rights are also embedded in national constitutions and national legislation, and we encourage people to map their own constitution and legislation which can reinforce those rights. What we have done is then identify what are the sort of core activities that any organisation might engage in around this set of 10 core rights. And so the first part of this framework on rights respecting schools is sort of trying to articulate that. But then comes a very important element, which is defining key indicators for each of those rights. Now here we did a sort of cross-reference back to the wider framework of indicators against the 4 A's that the Right to Education project did, and we had very active help from colleagues in the Right to Education project in order to help us to define which would be the critical indicators that related to each of those 10 rights. And then we went through a very interesting process where I was going to Nepal to work with colleagues there who were interested in doing a sort of mapping of what was happening in the schools in the areas where ActionAid works in the country across 50 districts of Nepal. Here we engaged in a dialogue around this framework of 10 core rights and around the initial indicators that we developed, and we sort of tested those against the reality of Nepal, working with people from the University of Kathmandu, from the Participatory Action Network in Nepal, the PRA network, from the people who have been working in a journalists education group and in the National Education Coalition that brings together teachers, parents and other actors. And in a dialogue with them we elaborated what would be those indicators, into a format which would be able to collect data in each school catchment area. in the process, of course, we made various changes. So if you look at the sort of area of right to non-discrimination and how we've elaborated that, we, in the context of Nepal, of course, found that one of the key areas of discrimination in many of the schools was working with low-caste children or Dalit children, and the range of ideas that came up around that indicator of discrimination or non-discrimination included elements which we previously hadn't specifically looked at. Who is discriminating, whether it's the children discriminating against other children, or the teachers or the school authorities, but also looking as a factor of discrimination in that context, whether or not there are teachers from the Dalit community working in the schools, and whether the teachers themselves suffer from discrimination in the workplace. So there's a range of ways in which these indicators were elaborated and adapted to the particular context in Nepal. But perhaps most importantly, we then said, well, if we just use this as a survey format and go to each school and school catchment area with this sort of survey instrument, it's a very passive thing for the communities. So rather than do that, we agreed, and here I think we had particular valuable inputs from the Nepal PRA network and other participatory practitioners across ActionAid. We looked at a sort of 1 or 2 day process using participatory methods which would enable local communities to be actively engaged in a dialogue about the school, looking at using visualization tools such as school catchment area mapping, looking at school timelines, doing school transect walks with local people, with parents, with teachers, with community leaders, actually walking through the community, and then clear focus group discussions with everyone from the school management committees and PTAs, with teachers, with children from different grades, and particularly with the parents of children who suffer from discrimination and some of those children themselves. The intention was that we would use, obviously there would also be a review of school records, a whole range of other things. One of the very exciting things then was to say, well, if we use this range of participatory tools and we match that against the sort of core indicators and the format that we've developed, we can sort of triangulate the results from different stakeholders within the community, and over a 1 or 2 day process of using these participatory tools, we can consolidate the data that's generated in this format, in this consolidated format, against the indicators that have been defined. And this then becomes an instrument which enables us to consolidate that data across schools. And as you start to do so, you end up in a position where you can produce, say, district education charters or citizens charters at a district level, and of course you can consolidate also at a national level because you've got a standardized format, even though the process in each local area was much more open and diverse. The intention is then that we end up producing at a local level in each school catchment area a resource that can influence and lead to a renewed energy around the school and strengthening the school, and hopefully a school improvement plan at a local area which has got the collective ownership of a wide set of stakeholders. We can also produce district education charters of citizens in each district, and then a citizens education charter at a national level, consolidating that data. Process of producing this format then in Nepal was extremely exciting. They are now looking to roll this out across about 1,500 schools across the country, across 50 different districts in the country, so that they can produce something which is credibly called a citizens education report for Nepal, and which will be done in such a way as to consolidate data in a very systematic way against these 10 core rights and indicators that are derived and associated with those 10 core rights. I think that then puts us in a position where we can use this framework much more widely. We've tested it in Nepal. There's a continuing process there over the coming year of doing this, rolling it out, consolidating it, and then feeding back the results from, say, the National Citizens Charter or Citizens Report and the District Citizens Reports back to the local area, so that each school can sort of contextualise its position and its experiences against their own district and against the national context. But we also think that we can use this in many, many other countries, including, so we're producing this sort of pack. Hopefully you'll have the latest version of that in front of you. We believe this is something which will guide our education work across ActionAid over the next couple of years. We hope to encourage all of the projects across the world where we're working to start organising their work around these 10 core rights, around this core charter of education rights, but to then collect data systematically at a local level in every area where we're working, in every school catchment area, because this then acts as the glue between local level engagement in programmes and national level engagement in district and national level engagement in policy work, so that policy and campaigning work at a national level is really strongly rooted in and connected to local programmes, something which I think has been a challenge for many organisations. We hope that it will also have significant implications in terms of generating an evidence base for engagement in international policy dialogue around education that is also often lacking. So this indicators framework, which we started life within the Right to Education project, we've really tried to sort of take that forward, adapt it to the work of the countries where we're working, to every country, test it in the field, and hopefully end up with something which is quite unique. I hope you have a wonderful meeting, and I look forward to hearing how it all goes. Thank you.